Great. So we'll start now. Just a quick overview about PSS, and I know most of you now has heard about us, but so we are a nonprofit agency that have for mission to strengthen the capacity of older New Yorkers. So our goal, especially in this time, is to keep you guys connected and informed. So if you know of anybody that needs help, so we also provide services to caregivers. So if you know of anybody that's heals, is chronically ill, has a memory loss issue, we can help their family to get some resources in the community. We also has a grandparent family apartment, and it is in the Bronx. It is the first in the United States. So it's built for grandparent raising grandchildren. We also have our coming of age program where it's inspired people 50 plus to live with passion and purpose. Today we'll continue having the same information, and also how you can ask your question is just to add it on the Q&A box. So we'll try to answer as much as possible. So also just a quick information about the census. We know how important it is. So PSS has received a grant funded to help ensure a complete and accurate census is taken to the community we serve, right? The census is important because it's impact in funding decision for things like infrastructure, healthcare, education, and more for the next 10 years. For the first time, people will be able to respond to their census in three ways: online, by phone, and by mail. If you apply by the end of April, no one from the Census Bureau will come to your house. So it's important to just do it online, so it's easier too. So count everybody in your home on the 2020 census. That include babies, young children, foster children, and non-relative who live with you. So again, to complete the census, you can just go at 2020census.gov. Okay. So without further ado, you can start now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's in the bottom this time.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, so let me know. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. So good afternoon, and thank you for joining me for a very important topic today. We're going to talk about building a remote care team now and later. So this topic was scheduled months ago, as were a lot of things in this world, and I've modified it a little bit to talk about some other things besides a remote care team, but we are going to talk about building a remote care team. So I'm Cynthia Perthuis, and I'm an elder care strategist, and I'm the owner of Senior Care Authority. We work with families across the country, and we have teams focusing on New York City and Southwest Florida. Today, I'm going to walk you through a fairly comprehensive laundry list of resources that you need on your caregiving team, both now and after the pandemic, as well as some sources to help entertain your family who are either living with you or you are caring for remotely. We're also going to try to use the chat box today for a little interaction. When we get there, we'll see if we're able to do that. My team helps older people find a safe and healthy living option when they are ready to find a community that caters to their specific wants and needs. We also work with families that want their loved one to stay home, but need help with all the required resources. We focus on people in the 5 boroughs of New York City and the southwest coast of Florida. But as I mentioned, we also work with a nationwide network, and we can help support life and living choices anywhere in the United States and in Canada. For those of you that have heard my presentations before, you know I like to start with a musical reference. While I've used the Beatles in the past, there didn't seem to be any other choice as far as a song goes. One day, I'll figure out my technical issues and we'll listen to this music, but today we're just going to look at the lyrics. So, people say we've got it made. Don't they know we're afraid? Isolation. We're afraid to be alone. Everybody got to have a home. Isolation. And those are all my favorite pictures of John Lennon. So that's where we're going to start today, is talking a little bit about isolation. While we are all sheltering in place and under quarantine, it is easy to get overwhelmed with how to provide caregiving for our loved ones that are also sheltering in place and under quarantine. They may be with us, they may be alone. The days, the nights seem never ending. The lack of human touch seems impossible to replace. Life for you and I can feel more like survival. Whether we are in a government mandated quarantine or we are an elderly person in a self-imposed isolation and quarantine, it really feels about the same. I'm here to give you an understanding of some of those options to ease some of the stress, whether those options are caregivers or those options are just some ideas to help through this. There are days that I tell people I feel like my clients who are isolated, and we'll talk about that. So let's start with a discussion around isolation. What is isolation? If I were presenting this in a classroom, I'd go around the room and I'd ask each of you to think of your definition. So let's just think take a few minutes and let's think about what you think of isolation. What is it? What does it mean? What's the definition? There's no one answer to the definition of isolation, but it starts with the size of your social network or the lack of the size of your social network. It's very important to understand that isolation affects the caregivers and the elderly family member in much the same ways. So everything I talk about today is going to be focused on the elderly and the senior, but know that a caregiver can get these exact same feelings and issues and need the same help. It's very important that you keep that in mind. Family members, in much the same ways, isolation is a basic challenge. Just like hunger warns you to find food and thirst warns you to find water, loneliness warns you to find human connection. So again, let's go back into a classroom setting and let's think about what are the physical impacts of isolation? What are things that you think about could physically happen to someone who is alone and isolated and lonely? The physical impacts are scientifically proven, and there are several studies around the world that have been studying isolation for decades. Some of these studies took place in prisons and solitary confinement. Isn't that kind of the way we all feel now, like maybe we're in prison or that we're in solitary confinement? After 9/11, many people felt isolated if they were stranded from their loved ones or were unable to leave the island of Manhattan. One of my go-to lines is the findings scientifically that prolonged social isolation is as detrimental to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands because I'm hoping that no one on this call is smoking 15 cigarettes a day, but I am hoping that everyone is aware of the physical limitations and the physical detriment of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. What are the mental impacts of isolation? Go in and think about those. An increase of dementia, of the chance of dementia, is the big number one. And remember, this increase in dementia is evident in both the patient and the caregiver. Something that should be considered is that when an older person is isolated from our community, that community is not as rich and loses the contributions from the isolated senior. Okay, how many of you have seen this picture? Facebook, LinkedIn, someone's texted it to you. It feels this way for me. And I believe that it also feels this way for isolated senior adults. My father used to say, when we asked what day it was, he would say, well, every day is Saturday for me because I'm retired. Now, the truth is, my father had Alzheimer's, and that was his coping answer. However, it also felt like the same day, every day, Groundhog Day. I sometimes have to look at my watch, my computer, to really see what day it is. And my day sometimes is spent between what am I having for breakfast, and then what will I have for lunch, and then what will I have for dinner, and then when is bedtime after I've watched some bad TV. We're going to talk about some resources for remote caregiving. On the next 2 pages, you'll see a list, pretty comprehensive list, of over 50 resources that you should consider for your team. I'm not saying that you will need every one of these, but you should be aware of these specialists. This is the first page of 2. So we're going to talk about some of these professionals, and we're going to talk about the other professionals on a later webinar. But today we're just going to talk about the ones that have the double light colored arrow, if you can visualize that. The single dark arrow is somebody that you may be able to provide remote support. The double lighter arrow is somebody you should consider as a priority during this isolation. For example, it's very important during this time that you get a relationship with a concierge doctor and make sure you have done the work with your primary care physician and specialist to be prepared for telemedicine in case of an emergency that does not require a hospital visit. I believe that for the foreseeable future, you and your family will want to stay away from the doctor's office and the hospital if possible. Doctors are amazing on the phone, and concierge doctors make house calls. However, the concierge doctors are overwhelmed, as is the entire medical industry. It may take a few phone calls and some time to get these relationships set up. Let me give you an example of the benefits and the beauty of telemedicine. I recently was infected with coronavirus in early March. And during that time, I believe that my coughing was so strong and so detrimental that I either cracked some ribs or I stretched out some intercostal muscles or cartilage between those ribs. I didn't want to go to the doctor because I was over the virus portion. I didn't want to go to a hospital. So I called a doctor who was able to listen to me breathe over the phone, ask me a number of questions, and tell me that it was indeed something wrong with ribs, potentially from the coughing. And it wasn't pneumonia, and it wasn't the virus coming back, and all of those things that were giving me the dark days and sleepless nights about this pain I was having in my rib area. That telemedicine time was amazing for not only the healing of, and he gave me some things to do, which were take 2 aspirin and call him in the morning, but it was an amazing way for me to rid myself of the anxiety about what could be going on. So telemedicine is really amazing these days, and you all need to make sure you're getting ready for that change. As we discussed in an earlier slide, the mental repercussions for isolation are great. If you already saw a therapist or a psychiatrist, do not stop those visits. If your loved one was seeing a psychiatrist or a therapist, do not stop those visits. Medicare has changed some of the rules around telemedicine, including therapy sessions. Now is not the time to stop caring for your mental health. It may also be the time to begin this relationship. These sessions can be held over the phone or by a FaceTime app or application. Nutrition and exercise go hand in hand when it comes to physical health. There are various meal delivery plans according to where you reside. There are also meal plans that are delivered as a ready-to-cook meal. Meals on Wheels and various senior meal delivery programs are plentiful and cost-effective. There is an abundance of free and low-cost exercise options. It takes a little time and skill with Google to find these. There are videos all through YouTube of various programs from chair and regular yoga, Pilates, Melt, which is a stretching class, bar class, weightlifting using all of those canned goods that you bought last month and haven't eaten yet. You can save these classes on YouTube so that once you find something you like, you can return to it time and time again. Here's another list of important resources. Don't forget your pets. They need to be taken care of. If you don't have pets, there are some services that are still offering a version of pet therapy outside of your home or outside of your apartment. People who are walking pets can also be another set of eyes and ears to your loved one who is isolated in an apartment or in a home. When they go to get the pet, they can look and see how things look from the last time they came to get the pet, to walk the pet, and they could give you a call. So keep them in mind as a really good resource. From a medical perspective, there are pharmacists that focus on the elderly, and they are making deliveries. This is also a good time to investigate automatic medicine delivery systems. They can be very expensive, and some are offered on a subscription basis. Do your research, as they are only as good as your loved one is compliant. So we've seen a couple of pages here full of resources, and these are people that I want to speak with you about. We're going to do some other webinars on some of the other people who were on these two lists. There's also a website below. It's very long, but I'm going to send this to you at the end of our session. I'll send you the link to be able to go on and look at these resources. We all know that technology has helped the isolation problem. However, keep in mind, technology is not a long-term solution or a long-term fix. Dependency on devices will eventually provide diminishing returns. Think about your teenagers. Think about how the more they spent on screens and technology, the less social they became and the more problematic they became. Do not be afraid of these technologies. They can be no cost and simple to use. Here are a few ideas on ways to use these besides a simple check-in and a conversation. I have a friend that set up a multi-person, multi-location birthday dinner for her father, for her father's 85th birthday. He was in quarantine in an assisted living in another state. They arranged to have one of his favorite meals prepared by the assisted living community. They all had their own meal at their own locations. They had a bottle of wine and a cake delivered to their father. They had a practice run with the technology the day before with him, so he wouldn't be stressed about making sure he could get on at the right time. And then at the scheduled time, the family gathered around their own tables and their own computers, and they shared their own meal with their father and grandfather while toasting him for his birthday. It was a beautiful, lovely event, and it helped his spirits tremendously. These technologies are also being used for virtual cocktail parties, exercise classes, and book clubs. Some places are using them also for competition and for bingo games. Now let's think of some social activities, some other social activities you can do with technology. Just like we discussed earlier when focusing on physical health, there are unlimited ways to use technology to virtually be somewhere other than where you are. This past Sunday, we could all watch Andrea Bocelli perform at the Duomo in Milan. In fact, we could still go find that concert and watch it at our convenience over and over again. We can tour the pyramids or the Metropolitan Museum any day, anytime, rain or shine. We can see the symphony orchestra from most any city in the world. Again, any day, anytime, rain or shine. We could take classes at Harvard, or we can watch the Masterclass series and learn how to make cocktails, write a comedy book, paint a picture, master the art of negotiating. Again, we did discuss this a little earlier on the resource pages, but telemedicine and telehealth have been in development for years. However, the current situation has propelled the technology and the regulations, including the ability to pay through most insurance plans. And it's propelled it ahead by many years. This may be the new way we get our medical help. As a part of the new normal that we're running towards, we may not go back to a doctor for a physical. Physical therapists and occupational therapists, as well as personal fitness trainers, are developing ways to treat their clients without touching them. And meditation is another way to work through the mental aspects of isolation. There are a number of products that you can use with the phone that's also just not through a computer. There are, I've seen recently people who are doing massage therapy through acupressure, through telehealth and online, by telling you where to look for the pressure points and helping you figure out if you're putting the right pressure on those pressure points. So we've got some amazing people out there who are trying to keep everybody in shape and healthy. PSS and other groups have a variety of programming that they have translated to online services. No one is doing anything in person any longer for now. I have found that if you desired, you could participate in an online program for support every day, almost every hour. You don't have to be limited to the location where you live. Explore and see what other areas have to offer. I, for one, sit on Zoom meetings and Zoom events that are in New York, in Paris, in California, in Florida. They're all over the world, and we're able to participate in those. So that is one of the beautiful things of what we are experiencing right now. Some of you are probably thinking, there is no way I can get my father or my mother to embrace technologies and understand these things. You're thinking it's hard enough for me at the age that I am to be able to get ensconced in this technology. However, you might be surprised. Technology experts have retooled their business and they are able to work remotely. So it would be a good person to add to your caregiving team is a technology expert. DeRote, which is a group that's in New York, has online technology guides and volunteers that will walk you through by phone how to get everything set up. And while DeRote is located in New York, DeRote's market is the world. So if you have a parent who's not in New York and is anywhere else in the world, if they have a simple phone, DeRote can get on the phone with them and help them through and get everything set up, which is amazing and is very, very helpful. There is also a very timely webinar next week through PSS on how to train and support older adults. I love the name of this company. It's called Can Do Tech. I've not heard this woman speak, but I'm sure it is top notch, and I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to recommend this course, especially if you have older adults in your family that you're trying to get up to speed. Technology, technology, technology. Are there some simple non-technology things we can do? We can go back to basics. We can pick up the phone. We can send a care package on a regular basis with something fun to do and something fun to eat. We can send some flowers. I just read a report that talked about the way flowers raise your immunity. Again, a scientific study about flowers helping your immunity. So plant some flowers, buy some flowers, get a florist to send some flowers. So what's next? Again, some basic things. You want to set up a regular time to call and speak on the phone. You want to give your parents something to look forward to. You want to talk to your neighbors and their religious organizations. Find others to help you in the simple things. Like we spoke about earlier, a dog walker. Maybe your parent or your older loved one doesn't believe they need somebody to walk their pet. And maybe it is physically healthy for them, but it's also good to have another set of eyes on your loved one. Make sure you're on the telemedicine calls. It's so much simpler now with the new technologies and physicians, and your loved ones are more open to having you involved. Whereas in the past, they may say, I'm going to the doctor by myself, I'm going with my aide, I'm going to talk to the doctor myself, I don't need your help. They're much more open, and you should embrace that. Build a team. So go through the resource list and identify those that could help you make a difference now, could help you make a difference today in what's going on with your loved one, your older senior that's in your life that you're helping to take care of. Find some people on the resource list and build a team. For the long run, I'm a believer in let's figure out what we can do today. We don't really know what long-term looks like. However, you can talk to the experts. An elder care strategist, such as myself or my team, or there are others, can usually make an introduction to vetted individuals in each of the resource categories. My group is offering a free 1-hour consultation, so get your questions all ready. Give us a call and talk to one of us, and most of these resources will also give you some time at no cost to answer questions and allow you to interview them to see how they will fit into your team. Think about this team as a group of people that you want to work with you and with your loved one, but you also may want them to work with each other. So make some phone calls now. Talk to these people. They all want to talk to you. They all want to hear your voice. They all want to help. Determine what the next steps might be. How has this whole situation been feeling for you? Is it really workable for the long run? Is it workable to do remote caregiving with your parent? Is it workable for your parent to be in isolation even after our isolation ends because they really can't get out of their home? Have you seen a decline in either the mental or physical with your loved one? Think about your next steps as 3 buckets. If you had a choice, where would your loved one live going forward? Would they stay at home with the virtual team you have built? Would they go into community living when things settle a bit and feel safer? Would they move in with you? I usually like to discuss the when and how, but I think we're all still reeling from the new reality, and it's just best to take care of one day at a time. And it's best to just think, where should my loved one be living when this is over? What can we do later? I think we want to look at the big picture. Again, this past 3 months have allowed everyone, young and old, to reevaluate. Do I want to live here? Do I want to live there? Do I want to keep working in my current job, or go back to my job, or do something else? Where is the best place for me, physically and mentally? There is a danger that people may become even more isolated or even agoraphobic, afraid to go outside of their homes after the initial danger of this virus passes. Remember that your isolated loved one may want to age at home. However, you may have seen some things in your own isolation that were not pretty. Home can also mean community. It doesn't have to mean the actual physical house that they've lived in. I'd like to have a brief discussion about the choices for community living. It's very important to think about what we're hearing and reading about in the newspapers. While we are hearing daily about the nursing home deaths and the large number of deaths that are happening in nursing homes, I feel it's important to clarify a few things. The choices for high-functioning seniors and memory care adults with the ability to private pay may not include a nursing home. The three living options on this slide are very different, not only from each other, but they are very different from a nursing home. They're different from your mother's or your grandmother's nursing home. Each option is easy to understand if you focus on the name: independent, assisted, memory. So independent living. We all want to stay independent, and some of us have probably been accused of being too independent. This is a community that is either formal or informal and includes people that need little, if any, help with the activities of daily living. These activities include dressing, eating, personal hygiene, walking, remembering activities, medication. Independent living can be the lowest cost, but it has the highest responsibilities. Independent living can include housekeeping services and some meals and activities included in the rent payment. However, it does provide a lot of social interaction and is very beneficial to keep the isolation issues away. Assisted living. Assisted living is just what it says. It is assistance with living. This is a newer concept that was developed in 1984. Maybe you need help with bathing, or you can't really reach your shoes to tie, or you need help getting your walker or wheelchair, or you forget what medication to take and when. You need assistance living. Assisted living always includes housekeeping, laundry, all meals, and activities in the rent payment. There is an additional payment called care that varies according to how much care you need. And then there's memory care. Memory care is for those with more advanced dementia, including Alzheimer's. The payment for care can be the most expensive and includes a 24/7 component, as well as housekeeping and food and amazing activities. None of these, again, should be confused with skilled nursing, rehab, or a nursing home. Those are separate types of care, and those are the places that you're reading about now where there are large amounts of death. I like to talk a little bit about the urban legend of assisted living. The number one thing I hear from my clients is that they are not old enough to move to assisted living. After this isolation, at my age, which I think is very young, of 60, I think about how much nicer it would have been for me to be in assisted living or independent living, because I could have seen people a lot more often than I'm seeing people now locked in my apartment. Very regularly, when we take a tour, the future resident will walk out and say, those people are too old. What will I talk to them about? We have nothing in common. How many of you think that you are younger than your objective age is? My friends and I regularly talk about how young we feel and act and look. However, at the end of the day, we're all slowing down. And at age 60, we do not do the same things in the same way that we did at 30, nor can we physically do those things. There is a concern about loss of independence and control. We're all afraid, and our loved one is afraid, that they will lose what independence they have left, and they will be locked up and abandoned. They are worried that the food will taste like cafeteria food for old people and be mushy and bland, and they can't imagine sitting around and playing bingo all day. That's not the way it really is in assisted living, independent living, and memory care. On these next two slides, I want to give you a few minutes just to briefly skim these articles. These are examples of articles that may be of interest that talks about elderly Americans dying from falls. And here we have an article, The Health Effects of Social Isolation. As I mentioned earlier, research shows that social isolation, no matter how historically unsocial you or your loved one may have been, is as unhealthy as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. I'd like to stop right here for questions. And Shayna, can you either take questions from the chat or the questions, or can you open the microphone?
Yes, I can open the microphone.
Okay.
So what we'll do, so if anybody wants to ask a question and use the mic, just you can use the raise option. You raise your hand and it will allow you to ask the question. And also, yeah, you can use the Q&A box. For some reason, it's not opening for me. Okay, here. You can use the Q&A box. It's easier on the Q&A box because we don't want to miss it if you add it on the, okay, one person, one second. Janet, you can just unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
This was very good, Cynthia, very, very informative. I'd like to sign up for that session on the technology next Wednesday. Are you going to send something out on that?
Yes.
Shayna, you'll send something out on that, right?
Yeah, so we'll send another reminder. So it will go to everybody that registered to our email e-newsletter.
Okay,
So you'll come to you. Yes, you can just,
thank you.
no problem. Thank you for participating. Yes, so it's easier to add the question in the Q&A box so that we don't miss anything. If anybody has a question, you want to type it, just type it in the Q&A box and you can see it and answer it. Again, thank you, Cynthia. That was very informative for everyone.
You're welcome. So let me tell you, and if you have some other questions, you also can send those to me in an email. So there's a few things other than the items that I spoke about earlier that I think you also will find helpful. So I have a link for these items on a list on my webpage. And what I'd like for you to do is send me an email to the email address that's on your screen, and I will send you back the links and the resources. So for one thing, I've done a recent podcast on isolation that has even more information on the isolation piece, and I'll be glad to send that to you. And I'm on a panel tomorrow afternoon at 3:00 Eastern with a psychologist, and we're talking about the physical and mental issues around isolation. Again, we're focused on isolation at that point. And then this list of resources that I can send over to you. So feel free to send me an email and I will get those things back to you. What you need to remember is that you need a team so that you're not alone, and you're not alone. So thanks so much for your time and attention. And I know that you took away at least one new piece of information. Again, feel free to email me or call me for any information or questions. As a reminder, our company and my teams in New York and Florida have a 1-hour free consultation program going on during this pandemic so that we can answer all of your questions, or as many of your questions as we can, in an hour. Feel free to contact me. We'll be glad to set that up with you. And I want to thank PSS Circle of Care for this great opportunity. I'd love to do these webinars with you guys. And just stay healthy and focus on the possibilities. Shayna, if you're speaking, we cannot hear you.
You're right. Yes. So thank you again. So there's a question on the Q&A box.
Sure.
Can you see it?
I can't see it.
Okay. So the person asks, where can I find resources to check for my mom home environment for safety and proper procedure for cleaning and maintenance? She has a 24 hours in home care support.
If you will send me an email, I will send you the names and your email and tell me where she is located. And I'll send you the names of some contacts that can help you with that.
Okay, great. Okay.
Okay.
So thank you again.
Okay. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Have a great day, everyone.
Okay.